Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to be here. For me today, I'm sitting in a comfortable place, in a familiar place. I am warm, I am dry, and outside it is the opposite of both of those things. So I'm glad to be doing what I'm doing right now, recording this talk. I'll schedule this to be posted at some point, so who knows when you'll actually be seeing it or hearing it. But I'm glad to be doing this, and I'm glad that you are a part of it. It's really cool to be able to connect and stretch across time and space and be in the same place, even though we're in different places and different times. It's quite a dharma there for us. So today I want to talk about the second Bodhisattva vow in a kind of abstract way, and I hope that's okay. It's the talk I'm giving, so we'll see. But the second, the Bodhisattva vows are the four great vows. They're sometimes called the four Bodhisattva vows. They're you can't see them in the camera there, but they're above me on the wall there in kanji. But the four Bodhisattva vows are really central, important teachings, voiced aspiration, ritual devotions in Mahayana Buddhism. I think all expressions of Mahayana Buddhism have at least some relationship to the four Bodhisattva vows. And in the Zen liturgy that I was trained in and still do, they're front and center. They're a hugely important part of the expression of Soto Zen Buddhism. So the four Bodhisattva vows, you can search those up and find them. The first one basically says, beings are numberless, in the translation that I use. Beings are numberless, vowing to save them. So there's an acknowledgement there's an infinite number of beings, and the aspiration of my practice, the aspiration of my heart, is to be of service to all of them. So, pretty big. Second one is the one we're talking about today. Dharma gates are boundless, vowing to enter them. That's a pretty typical translation. Oftentimes, if you look this up, you might find an I, because they like to put the I vow to enter them, as opposed to just the activity of vowing. But either way, the translations of this one are usually pretty close. Dharma gates are limitless, boundless is the one I have in my head. But what we're talking about here, Dharma gate is a moment of experience that can be experienced as a teaching moment. Dharma, in the Buddhist tradition, with a capital D, means teaching. Strictly speaking, the teaching of Buddha. In a less strict sense, truth, correct expression, right relationship, uprightness, Dharma, gospel, a truth, right? A teaching of some kind. Something's being expressed that is of benefit, right? Roughly speaking, teaching, we're going to use that word for Dharma, a teaching, an expression that is nourishing, that will point me towards something that is true, right? Point me toward truth. Dharma gates are boundless, meaning there's an infinite variety, an infinite possibility of expression, and they're happening in a limitless way. There's no end to the possibilities and to the presence, to the already existent presence of Dharma. Right? Wow. And then the last half of the statement is, I vow to enter them all. Basically, I'm vowing to enter them. Like, yep, I will learn every single possible thing. So I'm not talking about the Bodhisattva vows. There's a whole psychology to them and the way they're set up and the whole deal. This isn't that talk. What I am interested in today and what I want to speak to is the idea that Dharma isn't limited. I think it's an incredibly challenging and an incredibly important teaching. And I think we can get caught, and I think most of us are caught, by the idea that Dharma, as spiritual truth, is in some way limited to Buddhism, because that's how we use that word, Dharma. That's a Buddhist term referring to Buddhist teachings. That's a limitation that we impose when the vow that I just expressed, Dharma gates are boundless, will directly contradict that possibility. Because boundless means no possible parameter, no possible limit. And the Pali Canon, as big as it is, because it's a bruiser, there's a lot in the Pali Canon. The original records of what's recorded sayings of the historical Buddha, right? 300 odd years after he died, people started writing stuff down, and that corpus of volumes is referred to as the Pali Canon, the collection of stuff that was written down in Pali, probably spoken in a variation of that language. You get what I'm saying? Like, the belief within the tradition is Buddha actually, the historical human being actually said these things, right? That's almost certainly impossible, positively a myth, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why that wouldn't be the case. Doesn't matter. The point is, traditional understanding is that's Dharma, and what I've just described to you is bound because it has a limit. And it's a bruiser. It's a big limit. It's thousands of pages saying thousands of different things. Wow. It's an incredibly beautiful expression. And it also is finite. And so if Dharma gates are boundless, they have to include more than the Pali Canon. They have to, by definition, include more than Buddhism as a whole, which goes way beyond the Pali Canon. Right? Mahayana Buddhism spends a lot of time with another many thousands of pages of stuff that isn't included in the Pali Canon. Let's say there's 1 million pages. Let's say there's 1 billion pages. That's still a finite number. So how about the Dharma gates, the expressions of spiritual truth that aren't written down? How about the ones that are outside of Buddhism? How about the ones that aren't bound by language? How about the ones that aren't bound by human expression? Is Dharma human? Or is human expression and human Dharma just one of an infinite possibilities, right? There are scriptures, I think, Avatamsaka Sutra, if you're into this kind of stuff, Flower Garland Sutra. I think that's the one that talks about other Dharma verses, other Buddha verses where the Dharma was spoken through scent, the sense of smell, and where Dharma was expressed through music, and where Dharma was expressed through taste, where Dharma was, I mean, these are pretty fantastical ideas, but they're using these ideas to go out of their way to say, like, don't think Dharma is about something you can write down, and it's certainly not going to be limited to English and Buddhism and all that kind of stuff. I'm belaboring the point. Dharma gates are boundless, and that's what I want to talk about. Because I think that puts, and I think why this is so important is it helps us remember that the scope of what we're actually doing is way bigger than whatever it is, the culture you're part of or the country you live in or then how you self-define as a meditation practitioner or a Buddhist or a Zen Buddhist or whatever. Way bigger than that, bigger even than human. This is the project of consciousness itself. Right? And all of us can understand that consciousness includes human, but it's absolutely not limited to it. Dharma gates are infinite. Dharma gates are boundless. And so the challenge of this teaching is, number one, to start being curious about the Dharma that I'm receiving right now that is not in the form of language, that might not come from people who call themselves Buddhists, that might not show up in a way that's pleasing, or in a way that's comfortable, or in a way that's preferential to me. Boundless, remember? No bounds. And it puts us in a position of needing, as students, our responsibility to regard everything as Buddha. Everything as Buddha. If Dharma gates are boundless, everything must be teaching me. All of the time. Everything must be Buddha. This is a cosmic version of Buddha, not the human being expression that lived and died 2,500 years ago. Way different field of practice and a way bigger responsibility, or invitation if you prefer. Way bigger door, way bigger Dharma gates open to the student, which is all of us, all of the time, because everything is Buddha. And so here I am. What is my experience telling me about what is true, about what is wise, about what is kind, about what is upright? What is the Dharma of this moment, right? That's why we take the posture that we do when we sit Zazen, an upright posture, a balanced posture, a non-leaning posture, a relaxed posture, an attentive posture. There I've just described Buddha. Those are all Buddha qualities, right? Even to take the posture is a Dharma gate, right? We talk about that a lot in Zen. Your posture is a Dharma gate. It's a big deal. So the reason I'm giving this talk and the reason I'm starting with Dharma gates or Boundless and the reason I'm going to end with Dharma gates or Boundless is I want to put it in a nice Buddhist envelope, which I hope I have just done. I tried to describe it as an infinite envelope, but I still want to start with Buddhism and end with Buddhism. Then I can feel like I can get away with a little bit more. Because there's the actual story I want to tell, and this matters. This really matters. It matters to me greatly. I think about this a tremendous amount. And I wish I had the recording of it, because if I had the recording, I could give you exact words, and that would be helpful. It would help us place it all in time and in space, but I'm afraid that I can't. So many years ago, I'm going to guess 35 years ago or something, I don't know, 1990s. I was a great fan of a radio show on public radio. I think it was public radio, called Jazz Originals, by a local guy. I'm from Minnesota. Local guy named Butch Thompson. Most of you, that name won't mean anything. There's a handful of you who go, oh my God, yeah, I know exactly who Butch Thompson is. But for those of you who don't, which is the majority, he was a jazz pianist and a jazz clarinet player who played a lot in the cities. He played a lot in other venues too, but he used to play here a lot in the cities at a place called Jazz Emporium in Mendota Heights. And he had a radio show, a little tiny radio show. It was just him, and he'd play old recordings, and he would talk about their origin, who was in the band, what movement within jazz as a larger genre those recordings represented. And it was just kind of like, basically, my interpretation was, this is a guy who's a really massive geek around the earliest expressions of what we now call jazz in this country. And he was super into it, and he knew a whole bunch about it, and his passion was very, very evident, right? So I'm listening to Jazz Originals one night, and I used to record the show. That's why I thought maybe I could find this recording and tell you when he said it and get his words exactly right. But I'm afraid, at least for now, we're dependent on my memory. But this is more of an emotional memory, and that's what's important. He had just gotten through playing a short recording of a session made by Louis Armstrong in his Hot Five. Again, search it up. This is one of the great jazz collections of personalities in the history of the world. And these songs are quite short, 2 minutes, maybe 3. Short. They come in, they're burn bright, and then boom, they're done. And he's really into Louis Armstrong in his Hot Five. He just got through playing this song, and he was talking about the key changes and the solos and the personalities and all that kind of stuff. And then what I remember, there was a kind of a pause, because he was a soft-spoken guy. He was a quiet guy. And there were sometimes pauses in his program. And he wasn't a histrionic guy at all. He wasn't very obviously emotional, which I really liked about him. It's a quality that I like in people, that I aspire to, that I lack. But he was a pretty typical kind of low-key, Midwestern guy. And so he played the recording, long pause, and he said, if you listen to this song every day, the secrets of the universe will reveal themselves to you. I'm not kidding. And then he shifted gears and talked about something else. But he said it in such a tone that it stayed with me, because it stood out. That's an outrageous claim to make about a recording from 1920, whatever it was, the last 3 minutes, that was made on one day at one time with one microphone in one moment, right? That's a crazy assertion, and an unusually emotional assertion. And so it stood out, and I've remembered it all these years, and I think about it, and I think about it. Because I realized as he was saying it, that he was describing himself. Like, I've listened to these recordings over and over and over and over for decades of my life. And I've learned things that I can't explain to you. And I'm not talking mystical, and I'm not talking woo-woo here. I'm talking to your heart and the part of you that can apprehend that something is being transmitted to you from within you, actually, when you really resonate deeply with a piece of art. Something's happening there that you can later use words to describe, and that will be fine, and we should, and that's nice. But you can feel, because you have had this experience, because everybody has had this experience, that whatever words you use to describe it later, as wonderful as they might be, are always going to be a diminishment, a reduction, and a symbol of an experience. They will not be the experience. And all of us know this. We actually all know this. Think about your favorite song, the thing you've heard the most, the song that's on your iTunes playlist that has 1,000 listens to it, or whatever. Why? What is that? Like, what is that? Really, sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and write a paragraph the best you can on why that's the song that you've listened to so many times. And you'll start realizing there are plenty of words that come, but all of them are really inadequate. And the harder you try, it's almost like the worse it gets. Like, I can't answer that question. I actually can't answer that question. So he says, listen to this every day, and the secrets of the universe will reveal themselves to you. I know he was speaking on behalf of himself. Like, I've heard this over and over and over. And I can hear how complete the expression is. Whatever it was they were transmitting, I received it. I got it. It doesn't have to make it special. It doesn't have to make it powerful. It doesn't have to make it woo-woo. It doesn't have to make me unique. It doesn't have to mean anything about them. It doesn't have to mean anything about me. All of those would be reductions. But what he is describing, and the reason I'm framing this talk the way I am, is he's describing a Dharma gate. He wouldn't know that word. But for him, Louis Armstrong's Hot Five was a Dharma gate. And he said it with such seriousness. Like, I'm not kidding. This expression made by these people in this room 100 years ago is just as valid, as just as profound, as just as limitless as the Gospel of John or the Fire Sermon or the Heart Sutra, right? There's something incredibly powerful about the assertion of this quiet, weird, jazz nerd Midwestern man saying in the middle of the night to an audience of probably 12 people, there's something happening here in my heart when I listen to this. And for just a second, I'm letting my normal ego boundaries down and telling you something. Like, there's something really profound here. Please open yourself to it. And of course, what's implied there, this isn't about him loving Louis Armstrong's Hot Five, and Louis Armstrong's Hot Five does not have any monopoly on this, because it doesn't matter if it's Louis Armstrong's Hot Five that takes you there, or Duran Duran that takes you there, or Hania Rani that takes you there, or Beethoven's Symphony No. 6, Movement No. 5. It doesn't matter what the thing is. He's just aware of how permeable his heart becomes and how large the universe becomes and how close he feels to all of it when he's responding to something that lights him up. This is way beyond personal preference. I'm not talking about, hey, that's cool. I'm talking about something else. And I'm not going to explain more than that because I know you get it. I know there's a difference in your heart between, hey, that's a great song, I like it, and the song that you like, and something else. The one you really have had on repeat 1,000 times. What is that? What is that? Especially when we look at the ones that we tend to repeat over and over, and how often they're sad. Or how often they're curious to us. How often there's parts of them that don't make sense. Right? Especially if we listen to more complex pieces of music. How come when you're sad, you put the sad song on repeat? Why? Like, why do you do that? It's sad. Sad is uncomfortable. Why are you repeating it over and over and over? You can't tell me that's not a Dharma gate. Because ego preferences have gone to sleep right now, and you're like, no, I need to hear the expression of the thing that I am already experiencing because it helps me feel bigger somehow, connected to something that isn't just me somehow. I don't care if we think about it in terms of Dharma or not, but there's something alivening there, even if the thing that's being expressed is grief or sadness or confusion or unrequited longing, right? So that's my entry, is this crazy story from 35 years ago about Butch Thompson saying the secrets of the universe are hidden inside music. I'm not kidding, you know? There's a power in that. So I'll shift gears ever so slightly. There's a very famous Christian mystic, Meister Eckhart, which means master Eckhart. Meister is German, Master Eckhart, who gave a bunch of extraordinary teachings in the form of sermons in the 1200s. He was a contemporary of Rumi. He was a contemporary of Hafez in the Sufi tradition. He was a contemporary of Dogen in the Japanese Zen tradition. I don't know that any of these people knew about each other, probably not. But in the early 1200s, there was like this kind of burst of amazing teachers throughout the world in really, really different traditions. And Meister Eckhart was one of them. He's fabulous. He's one of my favorites. He very famously said, there is nothing so much like God as silence. We can easily translate that to, there is no greater Dharma gate than silence. There is nothing so much like Buddha or truth as silence. If you read more than one spiritual teacher, if you read a lot of the mystics especially, you'll hear that said over and over and over in 100 different ways. Silence is best. Silence is best. Then, Meister Eckhart again, after silence, music is best, which I love, right? It puts me in my place as a Dharma talk giving guy, because I end up having to talk a lot because of who I am and the role that I play and what I do for a living and what my life shape has turned out to be. I am required to use a lot of words, a lot, to describe spiritual truisms. That's cool. I'm grateful for that opportunity. It's just really important that I remember, and that all of us remember, silence is best. Silence is the Dharma gate. That's the best Dharma gate. That's the purest expression. And then after that, music. And then maybe after that, ritual, other forms of ritual, and then maybe after that, words. I don't know. He didn't go further, and it doesn't really matter. I have been told on more than one occasion, words are obviously the least skillful. We have to use them in the most out of necessity, right? But they're the least accurate and they're the least skillful expression of gospel, of truth, of Dharma, right? They're the least helpful Dharma gate. It's still a helpful Dharma gate, and that's why we do it. But I like Meister Eckhart saying, after silence, music is best. I don't know what kind of music he was talking about. I don't know if he meant all music, but he's pointing to something there that seems to reaffirm what our friend Butch Thompson could intuit. Silence, nature, original gospel. They call that in the Christian tradition. After that, we have humans coming in and expressing from something that seems deeper than just ego, music, poetry, dance, right? We can feel that's coming from a different place. And so when I'm listening to something that I find Dharma-ish, something that moves me in a way that I can't quite understand, that seems to be expressing something that seems to include a lot of different things, maybe something that seems to express everything, and I have those moments, I allow myself to pay attention in a different way. Because the thought has just occurred to me, hey, Busho, this is actually a Dharma gate. You should pay attention to this the way you pay attention to the Heart Sutra being recited. Right? The way you listen to a Dharma talk, listen to this. You don't have to listen with your head. Dharma talk shouldn't be heard with the head much anyway, really. The part of us that rises up to meet the Dharma talk, that's the Dharma. It can't come from outside of us, right? So the way that we respond to these moments, I'm using music today as my example, but these moments of aesthetic arrest, when we're grabbed, and it doesn't have to be dramatic, but it can be when we're grabbed by something, and the part of us that's being grabbed doesn't want to grab it or own it or use it. I hope that makes sense to you. This is different than looking at somebody going, oh my God, they're so beautiful. Oh, I want them as a girlfriend. That's something else. That's desire based on an individual sense of self that says, hey, I bet being around you would give me an experience that I want to have. I'm talking about something else. I am talking about the sunrise over the Grand Canyon, and you can't own that, and you can't take that home, and you can't even get words to describe it, but there's some part of you that's arrested. That's why they say aesthetic arrest is a spiritual experience. Some people notice this. This comes out a lot in Zen, comes out a lot in all contemplative traditions where meditation and contemplation are strongly emphasized, because people's thinking minds usually get a little quiet and the heart starts to open and we settle in, especially after day 2 or day 3 or day 5 or day 8 of a long retreat, and the world becomes very, very simple and everything kind of starts to come alive and you realize, yeah, everything's illuminated from within and always has been. We call that aesthetic arrest. And that can be a very small experience or it can be a very big one. Part of why we sit every day is to make ourselves more prone to aesthetic arrest, more prone to the experience that Butch Thompson was talking about of, oh, the secrets of the universe are being revealed to me through the chopsticks that I'm holding when it's time for oryoki, or through the song, or through the sunrise, or through, you can feel I'm talking about something different than just a I want experience. What we're responding to, in Butch Thompson's case, what we're responding to in that piece of music that you've listened to 1,000 times, when it's a human expression, part of what we're responding to is the sincerity of the effort that's put forth by the musician or the painter, the artist, the singer, the dancer. There's something about the sincerity of the human vehicle that I feel like moves us. I feel like the sincerest part of us can respond to the sincerest part of them and go, oh, I understand that. Right? There's a purity of offering. There's a purity of offering that I think is what we find arresting, what we find engaging, that's more important than the strength of the skill that's being displayed or the degree of innate talent, right? When Butch Thompson's saying, "Oh, these recordings of Louis Armstrong and his Hot Five, can reveal the secrets of the universe," it's not because, yeah, they're really, really, really good at what they did. Yeah, of course they're really good at what they did. That's obvious. Yes, of course, they're incredibly talented musicians. It isn't limited to that. This is more than just craft. There's a lot of people who have objectively more pleasant, skillful singing voices than Janis Joplin, for example. But my teacher, Tim, loved Janis Joplin. And his first teacher, Suzuki Roshi, after going to a Janis Joplin performance fundraiser for San Francisco Zen Center back in 1960, God knows what it was, probably at the Fillmore, right, was like, I can see that we're not so different. I saw her heart. There's the purity of offering. There's the sincerity of effort. There's the Dharma gate. There's the Dharma gate. Oh, I recognize something. I recognize something here. I think I'm hitting the aesthetic arrest. Those moments of being grabbed and struck, when we become the gong, when we become the bell, and life picks us up all of a sudden and hits us. And we ring because the song was so amazing, or the painting was so amazing, or the sunrise over the canyon was so amazing, or whatever the thing was, and we just go, oh my God, I'm responding from a place that's way deeper than my conditioning, that's way deeper than my normal run-of-the-mill personality ego offerings. Please look for those experiences. They're very important, and we're all prone to them. They are moments of enlightenment. Because the world just got brighter and the world just got bigger and we were just challenged and there was something authentic and true happening that was beyond our conditioning mind, right? Those moments of aesthetic arrest that Butch Thompson's talking about are speaking to something that comes before the personality. Zen might call this original face if they were feeling fancy. Tim says, my teacher, my Zen teacher, and his teacher, he likes to quote his teacher, Suzuki again, in saying, enlightenment is an accident, and practice makes you accident prone. Correct. Right? Dharma gates, getting grabbed by a Dharma gate's an accident. We can't plan it, we can't force it, but practice, makes us much more susceptible to being grabbed. That is why so many people describe day 2, day 3, day 4 of the long retreat going, God, everything just started shining. Not in a weird way. It doesn't even have to be exciting. I don't even have to want more of it. I can just recognize, oh, you've always been shining because you're part of a whole, just like I am. You've always been shining. I'm aware I can see it now, but that usually I can't, and that's about my perception filters. It's not that the world isn't luminous and then it is. It's always luminous. How could it not be? There's nothing but Dharma gates and they're boundless. But when the light comes on and I recognize, oh, here it is. You can feel I've just had an accident. I'm accident prone. A little moment of enlightenment, a moment of walking through a Dharma gate, a moment of allowing myself to be arrested by existence. What we're responding to is the sound of the genuine. The sound of the genuine. That's a phrase I've really come to love. Howard Thurman, the great American theologian, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s spiritual director. Howard Thurman, you can search him up. He has a beautiful piece I've quoted before called The Sound of the Genuine. I think he offered it as a graduation commencement address at a college, but it's profound. He was a mystic, you know. The sound of the genuine. We respond to the sound of the genuine in another, the place that thing is being offered from, because it's our sound too. The sound of the genuine is all of us. It isn't personal. The expression is deeply personal, but the place it comes from is universal. Authenticity, the authenticity of offering, the genuineness of offering. And what we're talking about there, what I'm talking about there when I say authentic and genuine, what I'm actually meaning, folks, is no ego identity to bang up against. For the duration of the offering, while the painting was being made or the song was being recorded or the ritual was being done or the dance was being, there just wasn't another self there as a separate ego thing to bang up against that wanted approval or wanted to be good and not bad, or that I had to compare myself to or judge or blah, 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 blah. There was just a freedom of expression and a genuine thing happening, and the genuine part of me immediately could join with it. There wasn't a sense of two things needing to compare or contrast or judge or divide or go up or go down the way we normally live. There's just no barrier. In the raw offering, there's not a barrier, right? What's being done is taken very, very seriously. The song, the painting, the dance, the zazen. But the self that's doing it isn't. The self that's doing it is either absent or just kind of off to the side. Does that make sense? I hope so. It's like that baseball coach, and I can't think of his name either. I'm terrible with names and dates and stuff. I forget his name, but he said, We take the game, he's a coach of a baseball team, Major League Baseball team. We take the game seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And he said it in an interview because they had just won the World Series or something. He was wildly successful at doing whatever it was he did, just like he was just really, really good. I was like, yeah, we don't take ourselves seriously. The thing we're doing, that we take seriously. And I hope what you can feel is you know what those two energies feel like in your body. You can feel the difference, right? This is me just playing tennis for the experience of playing tennis versus me playing tennis from the perspective, I want to be good at this. I want to be seen as good at this. I want to be respected and get worth or value from being good at this. I am playing from a place of fear because I am scared that I will not do it well and I will not be good at this and I will be seen as somebody who is not good at this and I will feel shame and embarrassment because I am not good. Can you feel it? There's so much baggage on that side. I'm taking the person who's playing tennis so seriously, or the person who's sitting zazen, or the person who's doing the painting, or the person who's playing the trumpet. There's a real Dharma gate there. We take the game seriously. We don't take ourselves seriously. That's a Dharma gate. We could translate about 2 different words in there a little bit differently, and that could be a Buddha quote. We're here to live. We take life seriously. But the liver of the life, the self, no, that's not the center of the show. Right? We're only scared about dying if we think the story ends with us. Right? The part of us that knows, well, this is just life, well, that's not scared to die because life isn't killed. It isn't. The body stops working. That one particular body stopped working, but they weren't the star of the show. Life was the star of the show. The movie doesn't end. You don't have to roll credits. Wow. Can you feel? Wow. All right, 2 more examples and then I'm done. These always go longer than I expect them to. Oh dear. Another one of my favorite stories, very favorite stories, from Joseph Campbell. I love Joseph Campbell. He's telling a story once about, he's a great teacher. He's a great teacher. He's telling a story about how in different cultures, East versus West, he did a lot of East versus West stuff. In some cultures, the persona, the thing you do for a living, is you're expected to be that as a person, and in other cultures, you're expected to just do that and then stop being that when you go home. I hope that makes sense, right? So the story he tells is he's from New York and he lives most of his life in New York, and he's parking his car in New York. He's going someplace. He pulls up his car and there's a young boy there standing on the curb with his arms outstretched very rigidly like this, standing on the curb. Kid standing there. That's a little weird, but kids are weird. So he pulls up his car and he's parking, and the kid says to him, "You can't park here." And he says, "Oh, why not?" And the kid says, "I'm a hydrant." Which is adorable, right? And every time he tells that story, because I listen to all these old, talks of his, everybody always roars with laughter. It's just the sweetest thing in the world because that's what kids do. I'm going to pretend to be a hydrant, and I'm going to stand on the curb like a hydrant would and put my arms out like hydrants do. And what that means is that nobody can park there because I'm a hydrant, right? So it's a very, very sweet story, and it's a funny interaction. He then goes on, because he's Joseph Campbell, to go, so there's a kid, and of course kids are like this, right? They don't have all the different layers of self that we do as adults. That kid is a hydrant. He knows he's playing make-believe, but that's a powerful phrase, make-believe. Make-believe, make-belief. He's believing for the time he's playing that little game with himself, he's believing he is a hydrant. There's no separation from little Johnny and hydrants. He is a hydrant, right? That's what makes it so sweet. That's why we respond to his sincerity and his genuineness and his wholeheartedness. Every little bit of him is a hydrant. How dare you park here? You can't park here. I'm a hydrant. Can you feel the sweetness of it? And can you also feel that he's creating belief in him? I'm making believe I am a hydrant. So there's no difference between little Johnny and a hydrant. And then in this story, as part of his larger talk, Joseph Campbell sort of sidesteps, like I am now too, and says, that little interaction with that little one made me think about clergy people. And then, of course, the audience roars with laughter again. And then he says something quite serious. How often do we believe in our role? You are your role. You can't park here because I'm a hydrant. It's kind of the same as putting on robes and believing you are that thing. There's a seriousness to that. It will tie in with the greater theme of the talk, I promise. But there's a seriousness to that because we all know being given a role of any kind can become an identity that we take very, 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 very seriously. And now we've lost sight of something important. It's not a Dharma gate anymore. We've lost sight of the great music. We've fixated on that one instrument. We've made a belief out of it, and we've just gotten smaller. We are not our roles. We are not defined by the place that we work or the role in the family or the daughter or the son or the wife or the kid or that's not defining for us. Those are not defining things. Can you feel how this is Buddha Dharma? It was said by this guy, it was written down by this guy, it's on this piece of paper, that's the Dharma. Can you feel how small that just became? As opposed to the actual invitation of the vow we're talking about today. Dharma gates are boundless. I'm going to enter every one of them. So yeah, I get to put on the robe. That's part of it. But I'm also going to take it off. In about 5 more minutes, I'll take it off. There's just one gate. There are so many other gates to walk through. It doesn't make this more or less important. Play hydrant and then be done playing hydrant. Can you feel it? There's something really, really important for us there. The idea of Dharma gates being boundless makes the universe very, 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 very big, and it opens the whole thing up to us. We're so much, when we understand when we taste the truth of this teaching, when we understand the marrow of this teaching, we're beholden to not stay small. Of course, you're more than an American citizen, or a Minnesotan, or a Midwesterner, or an English speaker, or a straight person, or a gay person, or a white person, or a black person, or any of those things, or a daughter, or a son, or a mother, or a father. What? Those are just outfits we put on. It doesn't mean they're not important. It doesn't mean they don't matter. Of course, that's a Dharma gate. One out of an infinite number. Can you feel this is like life, just putting on 1,000 different outfits? A bird, a tree, a sunrise, a person, a song, a dance. The whole point of this vow is to remind us it's limitless. Not only is the teaching limitless, Buddha's limitless, but we are not separate from it. The part of you that goes, oh, when it hears the song, that's it. That's what you're paying attention to. It's not actually the song anymore. That's what Butch Thompson was describing, even if he would never describe it that way. The secrets of the universe were never hidden from him, ever. They aren't. They're never obscured. The truth is never obscured. God doesn't play hide and seek. It doesn't make sense. Enlightenment isn't sometimes here and sometimes not. It just doesn't make sense. Of course not. It's always here. In full reveal. Forever and ever and ever. But for him, listening to that triggered the crack in the heart, the crack in the mind, the crack in the self that allowed us to go, oh, there I can see the light. Right? This is entirely an internal experience. And we know this because the recording that cracks open Butch Thompson might not crack you open, might not crack me open. That's why I said pay attention to the thing that cracks you open. What is that painting? What is that movie? What is that particular path through the woods that calls you back over and over and over and over and over? So, last story. This jumps off from the hydrant kid and from priests who believe in the robe. We have to believe in the robe up to a certain point, but it's really important to put the robe down, right? Because otherwise we're mistaking the finger for the moon, right? The robe references something. The finger references something. Butch Thompson's recording with Hot Five referenced something. That's the secret of the universe, right? Not this, right? We take the game seriously. The moon, not us, the ones who are doing it, pointing to it, right? There's a famous Zen story. It's in the transmission on a lamp. koan collection, but it shows up a couple of different other places too. I'll try to tell you the short version because the long version goes on and on and on and on and on. There's really, and again, this is probably apocryphal. In fact, it's positively apocryphal, but it's a great myth, which means it's true. It just doesn't need to be historically true, right? Myths are true in a much larger sense, universally true, whereas history is only relevant, right, for a certain amount of time. Anyway, the story goes that the great master, the temple abbot, is going to be done, and he's going to pass on his the abbotship. He's going to pass on, in Zen they say, the Dharma transmission. He's going to pass on the authority to teach, all the stuff that comes with that. But it's basically a way of saying the teacher will empower the student. You have everything that I have, you know everything I do. This is the deal. I'm going to empower you formally. It's called Dharma transmission. There's a whole bunch of things that are cool about that idea. There's a whole bunch of things that are really wrong with that idea. So you can make up your own mind about that. But in the story, which is a very cool story, the fifth ancestor, sometimes called patriarch, which is a product of its time, certainly, but the fifth ancestor has a student who's clearly the one who's going to be set up to take this role. And I'm fast forwarding through a huge part of the story. Tries the symbol of the transmission, the symbol of the office, the symbol of the role is the robe and the bowl, but the robe, right? The big robe, not the one I'm wearing right now, but the big brown robe. And it's folded up there the way all cases are folded, and the student is unable to lift the robe. It's like a mountain. He can't even begin to budge it. This is obviously a metaphor, right? This is mine, and he's going to take it, and he tries to pick it up, and he can't, right? You can feel we're in the realm of myth here. He breaks out in a sweat. The symbolic value of this story is obviously this weighs next to nothing, and a robe weighs next to nothing. Anybody can put their arms out and say, I'm a hydrant, right? The reason in the myth he's unable to lift it is because he didn't understand what the robe refers to. Anybody can lift a robe. Anybody can put on a robe. Anybody. Anybody can point to the moon. Anybody. But to actually understand that to which the finger is pointing, that to which the robe refers, is something else. And so in the story, he can't lift it. There's nothing wrong with him. He's not a bad person. In fact, he ends up, as a result, receiving a great teaching, having a great awakening, and beautiful. Off he goes. It's a kind of a happy ending. The point is, when we misunderstand what a Dharma gate really is, we can really get hurt, and we can really hurt others. So I'm encouraging you as a practitioner of whatever it is you're a practitioner of. You wouldn't be listening to this talk if you weren't somebody who wasn't interested in contemplative spirituality. That is to say, the inner journey. It's really important that all of us remember that the inner journey is an infinite path. There are infinite doors and an infinite amount to do. Infinite meaning not finite. I didn't just say there's a whole bunch because that's finite. I didn't say there are none because that's finite. I did not give you a number. There is no number implied here. They are not finite. Dharma gates are boundless. The gospel is infinite. There isn't a boundness to it, which means it doesn't have to always show up in your tradition, and it doesn't always have to show up in your language, and it doesn't always have to show up by people in your tradition, and it doesn't always have to show up as even things you like, and I'm now repeating myself, and it doesn't have to show up. It can show up however it wants to. So what you are looking for, because you're surrounded by it all the time forever, is what you are paying attention to is your own heart. You are paying attention to your own aesthetic arrest. I want to pay attention to those moments that grab me. That's a sign of my readiness. That's a sign. My yes is there. I just said yes to that song, to that sunrise, to that puppy, to that person, to that voice. Again, I'm not talking about preference. I like it. I'm talking about, it might include that liking. I'm talking about something much deeper than that. This is the part of us that wants to be pulled into a larger sense of being, not just a reinforcement of self over and over and over. So please listen for Dharma. Please watch for Dharma. Please feel for Dharma. Please throw out the word Dharma and use another word, and then throw that one out and use something else, and then throw that out and use a song, and then throw that out and use silence. Bigger, 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 bigger. Follow your bliss, Joseph Campbell said. That's what this is. The universe is bliss. You are bliss. There isn't any other place to go. There isn't anything to do. Everybody's heard that teaching. But in this body, in this life, in the world of space and time, I have to pay attention to something. There has to be a practice. There has to be a compass. And it's in the center of your chest, and it always has been. So all we're looking for and we're waiting for, and they're happening all the time, are these little flutters that go, oh, there, that's closer, that thing, that. And I don't know what that is for you, and no teacher can ever tell you that's what it is for you. But isn't it beautiful at the end of the day to be able to realize I'm never separate from it. It's speaking to me constantly. All I have to do is listen. I will enter infinite Dharma gates just by listening to what the awakest, most curious, most loving, most heartfelt place of me wants. Wow. There's the path. Foolproof. Foolproof. Absolutely beautiful. So I thank you. I thank you, as I always do at the end of these talks, for your attention. This one made sense to me, but I also get it wandered a little bit, and it might not make sense to everybody. That's cool. That's so cool. Not every talk is for everybody, and that's perfectly fine. So I encourage you, keep staying curious, keep practicing, keep following the compass. Anything that wakes you up, anything that grabs you is there for a reason. So thank you. Your practice matters in the world. I very much hope to see you again here soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.